I think everything looks like it's coming up. Let's do a quick check. And we are live in the community area. We are live on YouTube. We got video. Make sure. Yes. Good. And live on Twitter. Yay. Okay, good. So we're live everywhere we need to be. So let's talk about a lot of stuff. We got a lot of stuff to talk about this evening. But first, I want to talk about some enhancements we've made to the website. Now, as you know, social media has become a little crazy. And sometimes the National Weather Service, because of these issues, is having a little bit more difficult time getting those important watches and warnings out. And although I try to share them as much as possible, I'm going to miss a couple because they rapid fire them out sometimes. So we've made some enhancements to the website and also to the Discord. So let me show that for you. So first of all, on the website, this is 100% free because even though it cost me a bit of money to upgrade the website, I don't believe that providing watches and warnings from the National Weather Service should be something that you should charge. Okay, since we already pay with it for our taxpayers, with our taxes, right? So up top here, okay, above all of the content, you will get a scroll of information of advisories, watches, warnings when they're issued by the National Weather Service. It's very much similar to what I grew up with the Weather Channel, minus the jazz music, which I'm thinking about maybe adding. I'll figure out whether I can add that. If you guys want it, let me know. Because I think that'd be kind of cool, kind of like a nostalgia type thing, right? But that's absolutely free. Whether you're a subscriber, whether you're a first-time visitor, whatever, when you go to the website and also on the mobile app, it will basically scroll the latest advisory, watch, or warning. It worked out very well the past couple of days. And it's detailed and set up based on your location. So when you go to the website, you might be asking, hey, is it okay if NYNJPA weather website gets your location? If you say yes, then it will pick up your specific location. If you say no, it will just take the IP address, which is issued all the time, unless you're on a some sort of blocking system, and it'll take that and give you a ballpark idea of your local watches and warnings. So that's with the website. Again, 100% free. Also, we upgraded our local information as well, local weather information on the side. Again, completely free, completely no cost to you whatsoever. It's just something that I want to give back to the community because I think it's important with all of this insanity going on. Now, on the Discord channel, which again is free, on the public side, on the NYNJPA Weather Discord, I also have created channels specifically with information from each office. You go right to the side here. Now, Discord, you have to make your own profile. It's not the same profile as if you have a NYNJPA Weather profile. You have to use this profile. You have to create a new profile. With that, if you are a premium member, let me know, because you get premium section areas right here. So that's kind of special. But up here, you'll get all of the National Weather Service information, just like as if it was on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. It'll come right up here, and you'll be able to get the latest information just like it comes through on Twitter, with all the information, like the strong thunderstorm here. You can see the graphic very nicely. Same thing with the New York City, Binghamton, Albany, and Boston. These last three, I'm still working on expanding more data. But basically, again, free. You don't pay anything. You do have to create a membership, a subscription, or not subscription, a membership onto the website, a login onto the website, because it's separate. But still, it's a nice thing. And the reason why I built the Discord is because of what's going on with everything going on with social media. I wanted to make sure I have a community already in place. You can see already SPC sent a new watch. This is for the entire country. So if you want to see what's going on with the SPC for the entire country, it'll show up right there as well. So you get all your weather data. It's going to be really fun when we get to the winter season. I'm going to be developing a WPC channel to do that as well. Working on that next, I think probably tomorrow or the next day. So that's what's going on here. I wanted to make sure everyone knew about that. Let me go back to me again. Now, the weather pattern. Not much has really changed since we last talked, which was right after the 4th of July. El Nino is developing, it's growing, it's becoming more and more of an influence. It's enhancing our polar and subtropical jet stream. We also have a lot of stuff still going on with the volcano influence. So that's creating a lot of havoc. There's been a lot of talk on social media with the idea that climate change is driving a lot of this weather pattern. And certainly there is definitely an influence. You could definitely take that. But it's not the only one, okay? And a lot of interesting things are going on here with the stratosphere. Let me see if I can pull up some data here. Okay, here, check this out. Okay, so I like using ozone in the stratosphere to kind of get an idea of what's going on with our evolution. This type of signature that we're seeing here, I typically see in the fall and winter. The reason why this is important is because when you get water vapor thrown up into the stratosphere, it leads to cooling and warming pockets, which in turn leads to different density in the stratosphere, which in turn leads to different ozone pockets. Those ozone pockets help to enhance the potential for high latitude blocking. Now, it waxes and wanes as it does so, and we should see a relaxation a little bit in the next maybe 5 to 10 days. But the overall theme remains in place here. And when I see this, I say to myself, there is some significant influence going on here. So let's kind of put everything together here. Okay? You have the influence from the volcano right there. You have El Nino, which, let's see here, I believe this right here, influence here clearly with our tropical convection taking place around the date line. So that's certainly a factor. And I like using the Australian data because it's updated, but also it's tested against any type of errors. So it's very reliable data. So this is where we were from the previous week. And then towards the end of the week, we'll get an update on this current week, right? And you're seeing the evolution of our El Nino very clearly here. But you know what else we're seeing here? See if you can pick it out. Yes, I know the Atlantic. Yes, it's very warm. But where's very cool? Right here. Why is this catching my attention? When I study the weather, I like to find gradients. Why? Because the atmosphere is driven by contrast, okay? The atmosphere is driven by give and takes and evolution of the pattern, right? And to balance out that contrast. So when I see this taking shape here, not only around our El Nino, but also over the Northern Pacific, I start to see the support for enhancement of jet stream dynamics. And this enhancement right here is going to support a nice amplification of our subtropical jet stream. Meanwhile, the warm water up here, well, that sets up a contrast as far as our colder environment as we move towards winter and whatnot in the continents. So a lot of potential here for a lot of thermal gradient, a lot of forcing mechanisms in the atmosphere really starting to take shape. And that's part of your El Nino evolution. And this one is very interesting in the fact that there was a lot of support, especially when this was starting to go on, with the idea of a super El Nino taking shape. Well, it kind of hit a roadblock. What is that roadblock? The SOI. Now look, when you get a super El Nino, the SOI tanks. We haven't seen that. We've seen a lot of positive values, almost nearly a month of positive values from late June all the way through mid-July. Recently, it started to fall off again, but nothing that's really unusual. Minus 20 for an El Nino is not something that is, mind-blowing or anything of that nature. It's a weak to moderate signal here. The reason why I'm watching this is because the SOI is kind of like the bellwether for our interaction in the atmosphere. So we're seeing a lot of El Nino signals here, but at the same time, I'm not seeing the support for the super strong El Nino that I was expecting based on all the model guidance earlier on in the spring. I am seeing pretty good support for a weak to moderate El Nino. And that is very important as we head to the fall and winter. And we have time to continue to watch this. We got the next couple of weeks, so we don't want to jump the gun here and make a lot of conclusions that can change very rapidly with new data. We certainly don't want to put out winter forecasts just yet, although I know that some people are already going to do that with flashy little graphics and whatnot. But there's a lot of data that we still have to collect before we even start to talk about that forecast. But this certainly stands out to me as something that we definitely want to watch. Now, could this change? Yes. The daily values could tank to like minus 60, minus 80, and then your monthly values, your 30-day average, and your 90-day average just falls right with it. There's your Super El Nino. But right now, I'm not seeing a lot of data to support that. And also, let me go back to here. Not really seeing much in the way of forcing with our MJO. But let me pull up the subsurface here. See, I probably should have done this beforehand. But here is our anomalies here. So I'll pull up the PDF version of this. A little bit easier to follow. Give me a second. I do apologize. I should have probably put this up a little bit earlier, but it just kind of hit me. What would really, really seal the case that, hey, look, this isn't going in towards the Super El Nino idea. How about equatorial upper ocean heat anomalies? Now, typically, when I start to see a moderate to strong El Nino taking shape here, I see this going through the roof, okay? So what we're seeing here instead is a weakening and then kind of leveling off. And what that looks like in the subsurface is kind of like this, okay? So we are seeing clearly, there's no doubt we have an El Nino in place here getting ready to rock and roll. But I'm not seeing the signals of this going through the roof. What I'm seeing here is a lot of start and stop. So if we have a weak to moderate El Nino, that shifts the potential for the subtropical jet stream to overwhelm the polar jet stream. And what you end up with a weak to moderate El Nino is more of phasing and more interaction with the polar and subtropical jet stream. Kind of like what we've been seeing all summer. Granted, orientation of the troughs, the wavelengths, that all changes as we gain more thermal gradient. We have to study all that, keep that in mind. But let's put everything together. We have El Nino acting a little weird, not exactly going towards that super strong level, probably more likely light to moderate. We have our volcano influence, which is creating havoc with the stratosphere. And oh, by the way, let me see if I keep that data up here. Here we are. Our QBO, if you guys remember this, some of you guys may be new. The QBO is the stratospheric winds around the equator. When they go into a negative state, they increase the potential for high latitude blocking. Well, over the past couple of months, they have been trending away from the positive state towards the negative state. And what we look at, the QBO nature goes from the top of the stratosphere down to the troposphere. So what you want to do for the forecast is look at everything at 10 millibars, 5 millibars, and see how that's transferring down towards the lower levels of the stratosphere. And when you have a negative state, which is an easterly wind, what that does is that it increases your potential for high latitude blocking. So you have that interaction with what's going on with the stratosphere, with the volcanic activity, with the El Nino evolution as well, all taking place, all interacting, working with each other at different levels and different quadrants of the atmosphere. So you can't just look at it as 2D and go like this. You have to look at it like a box, and then within that box, another box, and another box, and then how that box is interacting on that box to form the other box. Right? Okay, you still with me? Okay, now this is the fun part. You add in the active solar activity on the top of the stratosphere, then throw in the influence of global warming. Okay, where again, we focus on what here? We focus on the precipitable water values. Why? Because that gives you a far clearer idea of how the 500 millibar layers are changing and expanding as opposed to temperatures, which is idiotic because, once again, there's always a question of where do you have your temperatures? What's the influence of the urban heat island effect? And all sort of stuff. Temperatures are dumb. Stop. I wish the media would stop doing that. For God's sakes, focus on the full layer of the atmosphere, not just what's down at your feet. Okay? So anyway, so you're seeing all this interaction. And the way that high latitude, the way that global warming all influences all this stuff is this. The expansion of the layers of the atmosphere, which allows you to carry more moisture, also allows for enhancement of the thermodynamic process. So you have the potential for more enhanced precipitation events and more sustained high latitude blocking and a greater potential for disruption of the polar vortex and the whole evolution of the polar jet stream. Also combine that with the lack of sea ice, which we'll get to in a couple of weeks, and you got a lot of different features all interacting, creating a lot of havoc in the atmosphere. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how we end up with this. What this active pattern is a representation of everything I just described, all interacting and working on top of each other. So you end up with this ridge constantly being amplified over the northern Atlantic, this upper level low and trough in the Aleutians and Gulf of Alaska, the subtropical jet stream beginning to interact with the polar jet stream. Here's that interaction right here. And that development of convection that's around the dateline, it's helping to amplify this trough right here. So you're seeing the transport of tropical moisture, even down from the southern hemisphere into the subtropical jet stream, up through into the polar jet stream, and marching its way through here. What does that do for us? It amplifies the short waves, and that's how we get this look in the summer with our water vapor satellite picture. Short wave after short wave, leading to thunderstorm after thunderstorm complex, leading to a very active pattern. And with the trough axis to the west of us, for the most part, it leads to, unfortunately, the potential for tropical moisture, very heavy downpours, and impressive thunderstorm events. We break out of this pattern, and then we deal with another issue for this weekend. Because, let me pull up this data here. Okay, so by this weekend, the trough axis shifts off the coast and we get more of a westerly wind for Saturday and Sunday. And what that does is it reduces the moisture in the atmosphere. And at 700 millibars, our relative humidity falls off. So this looks like a great time for Saturday, right? Fortunately, look where the winds are coming from. Yeah, Canada. I know. Look, Canadians, please. Water's right there. Pick it up, put it on the fire, put it out for God's sakes. In the meantime, we're going to have to continue to deal with the smoke and the debris from these fires coming back into our neck of the woods once again. So with the trough axis pushing off, yes, we get a break in the thunderstorm potential for this weekend, but we also increase the potential for some smoke and some poor air quality for this weekend, unfortunately. So hopefully it won't be that bad. We'll keep an eye on it, and I'll update on that in the premium public video discussion on Friday. So we'll hope for that over there. Let's see here. I think that everything's going well with the Twitter live chat. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's still going well. Okay. So that is my rant. Let me make sure we have everything up and running so that way I can answer everyone's questions. And of course, Susan will help us out with the latest information, anything coming up with Twitter and whatnot as well, to the best of our ability. But first, we go to our premium chat. And let's see what we got here. We have a couple people here. We're going to answer as many questions as we can while the Mets are actually winning a game. So there we go. We have a good night. This is a good night. The Mets are winning. We have talking about weather and good things. So let's dive in here. Let's see here. So, will wildfire smoke or fine particles be an issue tomorrow afternoon? Also, what does Sunday through Tuesday look like for the shore and Atlantic City? Okay, so tomorrow shouldn't be too bad. I'm more concerned about Saturday and Sunday, especially with a drier atmosphere. There could be some substance involved here, which means that the smoke particles at 850 millibars and 925 millibars can get mixed down to the surface easier, which will lead to a more degraded environment with the air quality. So we're going to watch that very carefully. After Sunday, we go right back into our active pattern for Monday and Tuesday with tropical air and the threat for thunderstorms. Tuesday looks like it could be another severe thunderstorm event. Hell yes. Jazz, very nostalgic. I remember the incredible of the soothing jazz and the storm warnings. You know, I will work on that. It's not going to be immediate, but I'll see what I can do. There's also licensing issues you got to worry about these days. Everyone's so picky. Like public domain kind of things. Right. So I'm going to have to find something. Maybe there's like a plugin or something on WordPress. Yeah, I'll figure it out. Give me a couple weeks. Urban heat island on local basis also creates more contrast between the heat retention as compared to the surrounding areas. Correct, not even counting the increased runoff of non-permeable surfaces. Absolutely. Okay, so here's the feedback process with the urban heat island effect, okay? When you get a lot of heat and humidity in the city, as opposed to even the suburbs, what happens is that heat gets locked in, right? So then as the heat gets locked in, it can't escape. So all this humidity that remains in the city remains in place, and thus you end up with low temperatures in the lower 70s, like 72, 73. Well, now you start off at a higher base than the surrounding region, which means your high temperatures can go higher. Then, if you have the same 850 millibar temperature environment and the same wind environment, then you allow for a feedback, because now that warmer air that you start off with a higher base leads to warmer low temperatures. So now instead of 71, now you're at 73. Then at 73 rises you up to 92. And then the 92 the next day starts you off at 74. 74 then allows for 95. And you see how that builds until there's a break, until there's a physical mixing of the atmosphere to break that urban heat island feedback process. So that impacts your low temperature potential, your high temperature potential, and it pushes everything up 3 to 5 degrees more very, very easily in a very short period of time. And then it clears out, which is why I've always been very much against the use of declaring high temperature to record high temperatures, because we live in an environment where we have more of our region built up, and the urban heat island effect is clearly a factor. It's influencing a lot of the mesoscale factors in our atmosphere, and it leads to this false sense of either total anarchy happening, or hey, nothing's happening because my neck of the woods there's no temperatures. And what some people, I don't want to call them deniers, let's say poorly informed, what some people like to do is that they'll go to the United States and they'll find their hometown, and then they'll do a 50-year plot, and then they'll see like, hey, my temperatures really haven't risen all that much. The problem with that is that you're only looking at the temperatures and influencing at the lower part of the atmosphere, and that can be driven by multiple different factors, from the state of the PDO, Pacific Decadal Oscillation, and the AMO, the Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation. And because of that, you can end up with cooler temperatures than your surrounding area. But when you get away from the temperature idea and use instead the precipitable water idea, what that shows you is the whole atmosphere from 500 millibars down to the surface. And that is where you can see the real change. And when you do that, as opposed to temperatures, then you really lose any type of argument against the idea and the theory of global warming. Simple solution here. What you put into the atmosphere, there will be an impact. That the world isn't going to end up. Let's calm down there. We don't need to block trains and cars and all that other stuff. Would be ironic, since the La Nina acted like an El Nino in many ways. Now the El Nino acts like a La Nina in ways. Suspect the volcano water vapor is the key to that. In some respects, yes. This El Nino still features a robust subtropical jet stream and plenty of strong shear, which is impacting the Atlantic. We have one storm. Might as well show that. Not really worth talking about, but let's cover it for just a moment. I'll clear that out, clear this out. And there it is. There's Don. Don is officially a tropical storm. It's actually tropical. It's actually a organized tropical storm. Winds are about 45 miles per hour. Let's see if we have any update on that. Yep, still 45 miles per hour. Don's no threat to anyone. But Don is a perfect example of what happens when you get a cold front and an upper level trough kind of lingering, and then you have the warm Atlantic waters because the waters are above normal. There you go. There's your developing subtropical storm that transitions into a tropical storm. Probably would have been named 20 years ago, so I'd say it's a pretty viable system. It's a fair system to definitely categorize and number or name, but it's not going to impact anyone. Okay, this storm happened to the north of all this dry air. This is typical of El Nino. When you see this, it's really hard to get a developing system. Now, what we're going to be watching for as we head into August is that influence of dry air is coming to an end, which is typical around August. So we're going to start to open our window, and we're going to be keeping an eye on that wave out here that could form a low pressure system, maybe a tropical depression or something of that nature. So we'll keep an eye on that over the next 7 to 10 days. That could be something that we need to watch. But really, there's nothing going on in the tropics at all. Very, very quiet out there. Nothing that's an imminent threat to the eastern United States or the Gulf of Mexico. So hopefully it stays that way. Certainly, we've gotten pretty much where we should be for this time of year. We're up to 4 named storms. We'll see where we go from there. Let's see here. Sun angle and daylight is also decreasing by the day as we move towards fall as well. Yes, we are both counting the days to get to fall. Yes. Absolutely. Fall and winter, as you know, are my favorite months. Fall because of Halloween. Well, seasons. Yes, seasons. So fall, obviously, Halloween. Winter, you got Christmas and all the other holidays. And I'm always a big fan of any type of feast because that means more food. So I'm very happy about that. So definitely looking forward to that. I know the Atlantic is quiet except for Don, but what is the Pacific like for tropical systems? We have one in the Eastern Pacific, but that's about it. Western Pacific is pretty quiet right now as well, but I do expect an uptick in that activity. It's been pretty quiet overall in the tropics. Really hasn't been really significantly active, really. When does Aaron Boone get fired? Oh, geez. Look, I'm a Mets fan. I'm not going to talk about the Yankees. I got my own issues. You know, who am I to say that a Yankee manager should be fired when I got the Mets below 500 with like the largest payroll in baseball? So I will say that if anyone gets fired in New York, it'll probably be after the season. People like Paul Krugman, who wrote a headline demanding the politicization of climate. Paul Krugman, isn't he like an economics guy? What does he have to do with climate science? I'll put it like this. You got a lot of people, unfortunately, who like to use science on both spectrums of politics, that likes to use science and twist words and to create, I guess you call it narratives. And what you do is kind of like a fault. It's like a augmented truth. So you get some data, and it's true data, and it's well supported, and then you tweak it to make it seem like nothing's happening or the end of the world. Both are wrong, and both people involved in it are incredibly stupid. You got one guy, I think on Fox News, saying that, it's been warmer back in the Cretaceous period. Yes, dinosaurs. We don't want to live in the age of the dinosaurs, stupid, okay? And then you have the other guy saying that, we're going to turn to Venus. No, we're not going to turn to Venus. Ignore the extremes and focus on the middle, and you'll get some great data and you'll get some great solutions and whatnot. Let's see here. Don is also an example of how storms are identified in the silent era that may not have been picked up before. Yes, well, Don definitely would have been, because it's right around the shipping lanes. So Don definitely would have been picked up. But there are certainly other storms that we might have missed. That's certainly a factor. And also our ability to characterize subtropical storms has significantly improved. Our ability to determine the development of a tropical low and how it intensifies has certainly improved. So those are all factors, absolutely. And we do a really good job of going back in the past and kind of studying that data and trying to improve that data. But it's never going to be perfect, right? So we'll continue to work on that. But that's why when people say, well, it's the most active season ever, put a disclaimer on it that we've ever recorded. And then definitely satellite era. That's also important to consider as well. Let's see here. That's so far all of the premium ones. Let's check out YouTube. Will it be more active season in August and September for 2023 hurricane season? I would be very, very surprised if we don't see an uptick in activity in September. August as well, but more so September, because September you're heading towards the peak of the hurricane season. So if we don't see an increase in activity, it would be one of the worst busts in tropical forecasting that we've ever seen. Because remember, a lot of people are going slightly above normal or even well above normal because of the warm Atlantic. So if we stay where we are right now, it'd be one of the quietest seasons that we've seen in some time. And of course, remember a couple of years ago, there was a lot of chatter about the lack of major hurricanes in the Atlantic and what that means. So we'll see where we go in that respect as well with our hurricane season. But right now, it is pretty quiet out there. That is certainly true. Let's see if we have any questions. Any questions on Twitter, huh?
No.
All right. Good deal. I'm answering all the questions. And so far, the Braves are losing. Not that I care. We're not catching the Braves. Let's see here. So far, so good. Answering all the questions and all set. So let's see what's going on right now on our radar right now. So our atmosphere is starting to become more stable. And again, this is on WeatherTap's radar and surface map. Our stationary front continues to linger around the region. These thunderstorms are going to basically collapse. Again, there once again is our moisture gradient. You can see where the stationary front is influencing. As I've said, I am not so much concerned of when we're in the 1.5 to 2 inch range. It's pretty typical for the summer. It's when we start to go well above 2 inches in precipitable water values that really always catches my eye. We keep on doing that more and more, which again is something that stands out to me. As far as instability, we're starting to develop that inversion. So definitely watch out tonight and tomorrow morning for the development of fog. I think that's a significant concern, I think, for tomorrow morning, especially in the Delaware River Valley, southern New Jersey, especially around the Pine Barrens on south, Hudson River Valley, and your valleys around the Poconos and Catskills. Definitely a good potential for some foggy conditions taking hold around the region. There we got that data. So, man, there's just a ton of mush. Let's see if we start to see any development of those low clouds yet. So far in our observations, not a lot. We have the development of that southeasterly wind that's going to help the coast starting to get those low clouds taking shape. Visibilities have already fallen to around 7 to 10 miles. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that. And this right here, if you're ever wondering, what is this little line and squiggling? That is your smoke signal. So as you can see right now, air quality isn't too bad. Let's see if we could refresh this. Got some new data. Yeah, air quality isn't too bad. We have some rogue. I think this is probably some faulty data being picked up. If anything, I would expect that around Newark and Manhattan, not so much around the south shore of Connecticut. But for the most part, not too bad as far as the air quality out there. Unfortunately, that will decrease as we move forward. Or if you're around a firework display. Because trust me, in these conditions, when you have an inversion taking shape, and then you get people firing off fireworks, let's say around a baseball game, that smoke from the fireworks just lingers and just sinks down towards the surface and just chokes everyone off. A jet streak from the Lesser Antilles to African coast is impressive. Let's check that out. Let's rotate on through. Okay. So this is what we're talking about here. Very impressive environment here. When you have this set up, that's a lot of shear. Now, notice when we have that dry air, you see how this ridge is starting to expand and our jet streams kind of getting pushed northward as our high pressure ridge begins to build. That is what's going to start our more active period of weather, I think, in the tropical Atlantic. I'm not expecting a barrage of storms. And in fact, when I take a look at the data here, let me go to the Atlantic. This is pretty cool. North Africa, here we go, tropical Atlantic. And pull up the data here through August. Notice where the trend is on the model guidance here. Again, pretty active over New England and the eastern United States. This is more thunderstorms. Again, not everyone's going to be above normal, I think. It just depends on where the thunderstorm sets up. But look at the overall theme here, basically going between our trough here and our ridge in the Western Atlantic, a lot of activity, but not well above normal, right? I mean, look what's going on in the Pacific here, and then compare that to what's taking shape in the Atlantic. A lot of below normal anomalies here around the Caribbean, around the Gulf of Mexico, even around portions of the East African coast here. A lot of your activity is basically just to the north of the Leeward and Windward Islands and to the north of the Greater Antilles, which would argue against a huge uptick in activity. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on. Again, we'll just rotate through the data here, and you can see not really much of a huge uptick. If we're going to see a lot of tropical systems, at the very least, this would be above normal, and you get a little bit better threat here around the islands. Not really seeing all that much. So this is something I like to use as kind of like a gauge. Like, okay, what are the models kind of starting to see here? I am not seeing a lot of support for a huge uptick in activity, at least through August. And we'll see how that plays out in September as well. That happened on July 4th and 5th with lingering particulates from fireworks due to the inversion. Yeah, and that smell just hangs in the air. It's just, it could be suffocating sometimes. Yes, I'm trying to get out of the house too, yeah. Looks like we go from cool and humid to dry and hot around the 28th pattern change. Very brief. It's more like a relaxation. What's happening is that all of the amplification in the polar and subtropical jet stream, what happens is that we start to get a bit of a relaxation. Let me pull up here. Okay, so as you can see right now, we start off pretty amplified, especially for the summer. As we move towards the end of the month, we get a little bit of relaxation out of this. Notice the upper level lows are a little bit displaced further north and they're not as strong. This is normal. No matter what time of year, you never have an amplified pattern remain amplified for months. What happens is that you get a nice little streak and then you back off and then it goes back to an amplified streak again. So we're going to be backing off, and what that's going to allow it to do is that all that heat that's been building in the plains in Texas, that's going to try to make its way to the east, but it's not going to be very successful. As that happens, we'll get a little bit break in our thunderstorm activity, but again, it's not going to last long. As you can see in the long range pattern, you still get that hint once again of a trough around the Gulf of Alaska and around the Aleutians. You get your ridge still centered around Texas and the Rockies, and you get your trough still centered around the Ohio River Valley. The overall theme hasn't changed. All we get is a relaxation, and what that relaxation does is allow your 850 millibar temperatures that are just roasting the Rockies and Texas and the southern plains to push east and get that one drive to the east and try to get its way in. But it's already setting up to get knocked down once again. So the end of the month, we have a good potential of maybe getting the first region-wide heat wave where we're over 92 degrees. But I don't see it having much legs because I don't see any fundamental change in the overall pattern in this environment. If anything, we go right back to where we were, and that's showing up pretty nicely on the GFS, European ensembles. You can use the Canadian ensembles. They're all pretty much saying the same thing. And the reason why is because all the forcing parameters we talked about at the start of this chat aren't changing. They're only getting more amplified. The jet streak from a lesser Antilles to African coast is impressive. Yes, it is. Let's see here. Do we have more questions? We reset the live chat in the premium section. It got a little hung up. Okay. All right, good. You're answering all the questions. It's always important to answer all the questions. Looks like Twitter is good. YouTube is good. And, well, as good as it can be. And let's see, our live chat looks good as well. Oh, and someone just hit a home run. Oh, well, the White Sox were going to go scoreless. All right, well, we're still winning 5-1. So, with that, for now, with that, I think we pretty much covered everything we wanted to cover with this pattern. Again, I'm watching out for the thunderstorms for Friday. That has my attention, and this is why. You see this feature right here? This trough? It's going to be intensifying. There's a lot of strong PVA here. Now, when I go down to 850 millibars, I'm seeing this signal showing up. And the reason why I'm very interested in this signal is that there is potential here for a lot of vertical wind shear. So Friday evening could be a time period where we see some severe thunderstorms with some pretty good vertical wind shear, and at the same time, plenty of moisture in the atmosphere. Now, this is nowhere near where we were last weekend, where we were up in this level here, but still there's plenty enough to support some very heavy downpours, some downburst wind gusts. We have the potential for vertical wind shear, especially 850 millibars or some sort of 850 millibar low forming. And of course, you also have the thermal gradient, because along with this 850 millibar low, we also have actual cold air transport. So with this cold air transport taking hold, We have potential for a stronger cold front, stronger dry air transport. All of this comes together with the support of some impressive thunderstorms. NFL training camp is opening up this week. Yes, it is. And we'll see how the Chiefs do this year. Is there anything that has surprised you so far this summer? Let's see here. Yes and no. As I said, I figured that this summer we wouldn't see a lot of region-wide heat waves, and if we've gotten close to one, as I expected, it'd be around the Philadelphia metro. That's worked out pretty nicely. Thunderstorm activity has worked out pretty nicely with that idea. I'm a little surprised with how quiet the hurricane season has been in the Eastern Atlantic, but even more so in the Eastern Pacific. Typically, with an El Nino, we see a lot of activity in the Eastern Pacific, and you start to see a lot of tropical moisture surge its way up into the desert Southwest, and that leads to a lot of flooding and whatnot. We haven't really seen that all that much, and typically you do with El Nino, so that has kind of caught me by surprise. We haven't seen a lot of storms cutting up to Japan and headed up towards the Aleutians in the northern Pacific. That's usually one of the ways in which El Nino amplifies the polar gesturing. We haven't seen a lot of that this year, which is surprising and concerning because I think we will moving forward. And if you throw that influence into an already amplified pattern, things could get very interesting in the fall around our neck of the woods. So we're definitely going to be watching out for that. But that's pretty much about it. As far as the forecast, what I expected for the summer has pretty much worked out as what I thought it would. But of course, the rainfall events themselves, that has been very impressive. With some locations getting 5, 6, 7, 8 inches of rain at a pop. Certainly it can alter your statistics in terms of above normal and near normal rainfall. So that's certainly something as well. Excellent questions tonight, guys. Excellent questions indeed. Let's see if we got any more. It looks like that's about it. Okay, so I think we covered pretty much everything we wanted to cover for this evening. Of course, as we move forward, we'll have more and more to talk about. We'll get more data on what to expect with the long-range pattern, how El Nino is evolving. So definitely we'll be keeping an eye on that. On Friday, I'll do a premium public video to update on the potential for the air quality around the region, see where we're going to stand with that. And of course, the thunderstorms are going to be taking shape on Friday. So definitely stay tuned to that. One final note. It really helps the channel if you're interested in subscribing to becoming a premium member, about $11 a month. It helps the channel and allows for more investment for me to add more to the website and to services I already provide. And of course, if you don't want to do that, you could always follow and subscribe on all the various social media channels. That helps too. Thank you again. Have a wonderful night. And as always, stay safe out there.